All
This
right.
meeting
Well,
is being recorded.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jomo Stewart here at the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. I am graced with a physical guest this morning. So everybody say good morning to Clark. Great to have him. All right. Let's see. So yes, it is Tuesday, May 16th. It's just after 8 a.m. And it's here for the Energy for All Alaska Task Force meeting. Slightly off subject, we do have a transportation item as our subject today. And so we have our friends with the DOT as well as DOWL, HKM, or used to be HKM.
Used to be,
No HKM.
we're still merged, but yep, just now.
All right, but here to discuss the current process of creating the latest Interior Alaska Transportation Plan. All right, so without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Miss Sarah and Miss Jessica. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. We appreciate you reaching out as a group and asking us to come talk about the Interior Alaska Transportation Plan. It gives us a good opportunity to reach more people who live in the interior and talk about the plan. And it's got a pretty heavy public involvement piece. And so we feel like at this point, the more people we can talk to and the more people we can discuss the plan with, the better. We really are looking for input and how this process works. I am with DOT. I'm in the planning section based out of the Fairbanks field office here in Fairbanks, Northern region. And with me today is the wonderful Jessica Smith from DOWL. She has been our project manager for the interior plan, and she has been wonderful to work with. So she has this wonderful presentation she's going to give to us today, and we really are hoping for some conversations with you all on the interior, its needs and priorities, and the interior plan looking 20 years out. This is our update, our interior plan update. So our last plan was last updated in 2010. And so now this is the next update for us. So Jessica, I will let you take it away. And thank you all for having us today.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and a few new ones to me. So anyway, my name is Jessica Smith, and I've been working here in Alaska since about 2012. Clark and I were just chatting about when we met years ago when I worked in Fairbanks. I lived there through the coldest winter on record in 50 years in 2012. And then I came down to Anchorage, and I've been down in this area for a while. I was out in the valley for about 4 years as their chief of planning, and I've come back into town here, and I'm working with DOWL and doing a lot of work for Sarah and the planning department at DOT. So really excited to see you all. And I was just saying, I'll be up there tomorrow. So I'm excited. And we're going to talk about why I'll be up there with Sarah and what we're going to be doing today. So as Sarah was saying, we're in the middle of that initial existing conditions, getting data, and part of that data collection process is getting feedback from community members and stakeholders, people like y'all who know what's going on. As planners, we do a lot of desktop analysis, and we try to be really involved in our community and know what's going on, but there's no way that we know everything. So I'm excited to hear what y'all have to say. So we've got a brief presentation, maybe about 10 minutes, but I definitely want to take some time to hear questions from you guys, or and if you don't have any questions, we have questions, and hopefully y'all can add a little bit to what we've been thinking about.
Actually, as a reminder, if you don't mind, as a reminder to the group, since we have this moment, and just to follow on what Ms. Smith said, again, this is for you all. So again, we like to have this as an iterative and discussion process. So please, if you have questions, yes, I am monitoring the chat box. However, you can always throw up your hand or simply take yourself off mute if you have questions or comments. Again, this is for all of our information. Thanks.
Absolutely. Stop me at any time. We're happy to chat as we go in. This is really straightforward stuff. So we're updating the Interior Alaska Plan, as Sarah was saying. It's the Interior Alaska Transportation Plan. So this is a part of the family of plans that DOT does. You have your statewide plan, and then you go down, and this feeds into that. And so I'm going to show you something to make that a little clearer here in a second. So what this really does is it guides future infrastructure investments in interior Alaska and in that region. We actually do this because of the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 23, and also in Alaska Administrative Code, Title 17, Section 5.0130 if you really want to go in there and dig in there. And that's where states are directed to do statewide transportation planning on a regular basis. Here in Alaska, we do that on a continuing collaborative process. And this is part of that process is chatting with folks like you. So we do this regularly. There's not a strict timeline. As Sarah was saying, the last time we updated this particular plan was in 2010. So we also want to look at a 20-year planning horizon. So we're looking out to year 2040, so about 20 years.
So that second point, and I'm sure you're going to
yeah.
get into it a little bit more as we move through the presentation, but intermodal or multimodal.
Yeah.
Again, I guess my first thought was that this would just be roads. But it's not. Again, it's roads. Does it include air? Either way, I that caught my eye.
Sure does. Actually, so why don't we just do that? Let's talk about that. So this is intermodal or multimodal. What we look at are roads and rail, aviation, ports and riverine facilities like barges or landings, trails, whether those are summer, winter trails. Some of our communities in Alaska, they really depend on trails to get around, and then also ice roads, or other winter access. So you're absolutely correct. What DOT is looking at specifically are facilities that DOT owns. So you think about roads, you think about airports, those sorts of things. But it's important to look at your transportation system holistically. So you want to look at all of these pieces like rail and like ports and riverine, even if those aren't necessarily DOT facilities, because they are a part of the transportation system and how people access DOT facilities, which tend to be a little bit more regional and big. Now in Fairbanks, you know that in Fairbanks there are kind of smaller, more kind of locally used roads that are owned by DOT. So you have to think about, so DOT has to kind of think about everything in that way. So great question. I'm going to hop back to where I was. Yeah, you bet. So let me show you the project area. So the project area is, you all know that Alaska, we can kind of think about it in these 5 different areas: the interior, south central, far north, or the northwest, and then southwest. And then of course there's southeast, which I've kind of covered up over there, but it's underneath there. And so the section we're pulling is the interior, but we've sliced it a little bit down the middle of that west side of Alaska. That west side of Alaska and up to the north, it's actually in a different plan called the Northwest Transportation Plan that was completed a couple years ago. And they have their own plan that looks at actually a lot of things that are off the road system. The interior boundary map that you can see, it basically goes all the way over to Tanana, right? And it's, so if you think about going to the end of the Elliott Highway, it's sort of bounded over there. It's using the Denali Borough boundary. That's why it's kind of chopped up funny on that side. And then it goes to the north, and that west boundary is along the Dalton Highway. Go all the way over to Canada. That's your boundary on the right side. After we get to Canada, I can't do a whole lot for you. And then down at the bottom, you're looking at the Matsu Boroughs boundary down there. If you can see it on my screen, it's kind of a little bit small over there. And so we're heading all the way down to Chittenden and kind of scooping underneath there. So that's the planning area. And you can kind of think of this as like, we've got Denali Borough, the Fairbanks North Star Borough, the Copper River Valley Basin, and then just this area over to the east of Fairbanks, east and north, that just kind of, if you take the Alaska Highway and go up. So that's our whole area. All of this is online. And when I first logged in, Jomo had our website pulled up, and I'll give that to y'all a little bit later. I give it to you now. It's the Interior Alaska Transportationplan.com. And you can kind of zoom in on this if you want to look at some of the different areas that we're working on. So this whole region.
I'm pulling it up now. I'm pulling it up now for them.
Fabulous. Love it. Yeah. So, this region, this is your backyard. You use all different types of transportation to get around. But you remember I was talking a little bit about the Northwest plan. That plan does have some different types of transportation because they really are off the main road system. Y'all are kind of on the road system. Most of where folks live are there, but we are looking up, and that's why we were talking about those riverine systems. So if you look up the Yukon and up the Porcupine River, those communities are also a part of this planning effort. So the project schedule, we are just starting. This is the best start. So over the winter and the spring, we did a lot of data collection. We started the socioeconomic forecasting. We're looking at both population and like what are the trends in the economy throughout this region. And we're also doing, we do some transportation system analysis, and all that is I look at what's there, I look at what gaps are there, we look at trends, and then we go, what could we do to improve? What are some gaps? What are some issues and needs? I do that from, like I said, a desktop analysis, and then I go out and I talk to y'all and I go, okay, what did we miss? So that's what we've been working on. This is the part where we define visions and goals and objectives. We actually have a working group made up of representatives from all over the region, and they get together with us and they'll be helping us here in a couple of weeks work through what those goals and objectives are for the plan. And then we work also with these public meetings, and we're going to be coming up to Fairbanks actually next week. Sarah, what is that on Wednesday? Everybody's going to, we have another team. Sarah and I will be out in Glen Allen, but there's another team that's going to be meeting at the Pipeline Center. So you should go over and see them if you have time, and I'll give you that date in a little bit. So the next,
Wednesday,
go ahead.
That's Wednesday, the 24th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Pipeline Training Center. And we can, I can reply back to, is it Jomo's email with the flyer too, if that would help.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. We do have a nice flyer, and you guys are welcome to use that and send it to all your friends. So over the next year, what we'll continue to do is analyze and evaluate different transportation systems, and that includes infrastructure resiliency. So I think you all may have seen the news, all the flooding that has happened up near a circle. So that sort of thing, when we have natural events impact infrastructure, we're looking at how can we mitigate that? Like, what are some ways that we can think about? We know that that's going to happen. How can we work with our infrastructure and plan for the future so that we can be responsive? So there's a lot of different efforts in Alaska to think about resiliency. And so what we'll actually do is a little bit of a risk analysis, again, with that working group, and we'll chat with them and get their feedback on what they think those risks are and whether they're high, medium, low, and that kind of thing. So that's sort of our next step. And then finally, what we'll also look at is we will just look at the old plan, the 2010 plan, and we will update the information that's in that plan and produce a document, an executive summary that will be really, publicly friendly, a lot of good graphics, and hopefully some pretty colors. But we want to make sure that this is a digestible document that folks can read and understand, so that they see where their feedback and their thoughts were going when we came out and talked to people. Nothing worse than going out and talk to folks and then not doing anything with the information. So we want to make sure that information is integrated in the plan and it is brought back out there so that folks can see what we're doing and what DOT's plans for the future are based on the feedback that we've seen from people.
Yes. Hey, Jessica.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess it's a curiosity question, but with the environment today down in Juneau going over the budget, how does the plan incorporate budget or cost?
Thank you. That's actually a really good question. Thank you for being curious. So this plan has a funding and implementation portion to it at the end. So after all of the analysis is done, late winter, early next spring, what we'll start looking at is, okay, here are suggested, here's some recommendations for what we can do. And we'll look at funding sources, and we'll have a component that's basically as close to fiscally constrained as we can think of 20 years out, right? We sort of know how much funding comes through to Alaska DOT, mostly because there's a lot of federal funding that comes out, right? And that's something that we can plan for. And then we'll look and see where can we address some of these things. The more complicated things are things that are state funded. And like you're saying, down in Juneau, the decisions that they make about state funding down there. So that's going to be more complicated, but we can do the best that we can with federal funding. I want Sarah to also respond to this because that is my understanding. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, these, because we're in planning, these planning documents are really meant to be more guidance documents and long-term planning documents, really. So we don't really intend to have a specific project list come out of these, but idea lists, and it should be a guidance. Jessica's got this great slide of our family of plans that sort of explains that our long-range transportation plan guides our strategic investment plan, and then it's guided by these regional area plans. And this is our opportunity to dig in to the community level and ask what the needs and priorities are of the community level. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll come out with an exact list of, well, from the Richardson from here to here, we're doing this project at this year, but it will cover things like we do have a gap and a need in these sections of the interior that need to be addressed, or we're seeing a lot of flooding, we're seeing a lot of ice jam problems, we're seeing a lot of bridges failing. Those sorts of things are going to come up in this plan, and then they will guide how we set projects in the future, hopefully when program funding is available. And so as these programs come up, and we have all kinds of new programs with the IIJA, by infrastructure law. And so we're using those program funding, and we're using these guidance documents, these area plans, to look at our priorities and see how we can fit the funding with the needs and the priorities. And so I think Jessica's right. We're gonna come up with quite a few areas that need assistance, and as program funding becomes available, then we implement, but not necessarily the interior plan won't necessarily be the next 20 years of how we're spending funding.
So
Yeah.
just one other question, and Clark is well aware of this as well, but back in the day when the Transportation Committee was full bore, we would have Ryan in your position at the time would come up and would brief us as well. But when money, like the infrastructure bill that came out, Ryan always had, or I don't want to say Ryan did, but Northern DOT always had contingency plans on the shelf. So when the money came up, they grabbed those plans and they ran with them. So are your plans going to be complete, 80% complete, 50% complete? So when the money is available, you take that contingency plan, pull it out, and implement it. Is that what this
So let's talk about, let me show you where we're at, what this plan does versus what you're talking about, which can come in a number of ways. But I like what you say, like a contingency. So what DOT is in charge of doing, right, is they're in charge of mapping out year by year what money will be spent and where and on what projects. And that's in the State Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP, right? And Sarah's folks, that's their whole job, right? Running projects through that program and making sure that you have that fiscally constrained plan every single year, and they update that regularly and all that good stuff. So that is in, you can see this here. You see this strategic investment plan, that SIP, that is where you're looking at things like the State Transportation Improvement Program and the Aviation Improvement Program, that STIP and that AIP. So all of those are those specific like number documents. We're way down here. We're down here at this regional area plan. So what it does is the regional area plan digs into a region instead of like looking statewide, which is way up at the top, which is policies. And basically like, this is what we want to see for our future in Alaska. When we get down to the regional section, we look at what those gaps are and what those needs are. And when I said recommendations, it's not necessarily like Sarah was saying, like a specific project from here to here. It might say along the Glen, here are some issues happening, you know, whether that's safety issues or flooding or maintenance problems. And so those will be identified, and then, you know, kind of key mitigation or strategies that you can use. By the time we get, you know, I don't know, maybe 4 years out, is it 4 to 5? We plan 4 to 5 years out with the STIP. You get in there and you would look at a plan like this and go, okay, here are where the needs are. And that's when the folks at program and development are going to sit there and really sketch out what is where. Now, what you were talking about with contingency plans, there is, and Sarah address this if I'm wrong, you might have something called illustrative funding, right? And that's where we stick things that are ready to go. And if a project slips, and 30% of our projects in the STIP, I believe, slip every year, that's when you pop that in, because you don't want to lose that federal funding. Remember earlier I said we have so much federal funding at DOT. We have a lot of federal funding here in Alaska because we have a special thing in Alaska where our state match is smaller than a lot of states. So what you do is you go in there and you have a lot of backup plans, right? Because you don't want things to slip and not meet that clock deadline, because everything's got a clock deadline. So yeah, you always have a contingency plan. And typically if you look in the STIP, you're going to look for ILLU, the illustrative, and that will show you the projects that would pop in there if something slipped or you couldn't get a project done on time and you needed a backup plan. Sarah, did I get that right?
Mostly. And I think, I mean, you're right. We have a contingency list, and Ryan, I'm assuming, was probably the pre-construction engineer when you talked to him about that. And our pre-construction engineer does have this binder of projects that has been through design, that is ready for construction. And they keep those projects on the shelf moving so that they're fresh in a way, right? Because you can't let the NEPA document go stale and the design go stale, especially with our influx of prices recently. Everything needs to be looked at on a regular basis because things are changing. So yes, we do. There is this contingency list, or this shelf, the project shelf lists that are ready to go, and really the regional area plans help dictate those. So we have a need in this area, we have project shelved in this area. Let's program them and let's get them out on the streets. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
And I think the pre-construction, if you're looking for that kind of information, we could have the pre-construction engineer, who right now is acting, Lauren Little. And at some point she could come talk about those projects specifically if you're interested in that.
Yeah, so
A couple of questions regarding, I'm sorry. I'm hoping this will be a good segue. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box regarding the working group.
Perfect.
So yes, please.
Okay, let me see.
Or really, the first question is who is on the local or the interior regional working group? And then the next question regards is that working group working with other working groups? But I'll let you guys check the chat.
I see your question. Who makes up the working group? Has anyone with the NSF navigating the New Arctic office, anyone working with their working groups been in touch with you yet? No, they have not, that to my knowledge, unless Sarah can tell me something different. The working group is made up of businesses, tribal entities, native corporations, other folks like Sarah at the local level, like planning managers at the local level and at the borough level, your MPO executive director, and I think I got them all there. So it's a little bit more, the working group is a little bit more of folks who their day job is to look at this stuff, if that makes sense. Sarah, am I missing anybody? Businesses?
No, I think I'm trying to think. We have local governments. We've tried to gather representation from all over the interior, and so we found community contacts across the interior. And so I think we're in the teens, right, Jessica? It's like 16 or 18 people on this thing. Yeah. And so, I mean, we've tried to do that, but we're also, I mean, part of the plan is to reach out to people too and do these small meetings or, these sorts of presentations. And so if you have a contact for NSF and NSF, there we go. That would be helpful. And we can definitely make sure that they have information and see if we can engage with them a little bit more.
Yeah, and if you want to come join us, let us know. We're happy to have you. It's not an exclusive group.
As it so happens, I actually am serving on one of the working groups with that, so I will be in touch with you a little bit further. There are two bridges downtown, right? And there used to be one on the Cushman. And so that process, when that happened, I'm Ramey Wood, by the way. Hi, sorry.
Hey, Ramey.
I was involved in a lot of these conversations leading up to that bridge work and the decisions that were made prior to then the art conversation that happened prior to the construction. And so, you know, I never published anything in any journal or anything, but as an active study and with this community and engaging with the challenges that in particular like your department faces in these kinds of programs and projects, because of the dovetailing and stacking with all the varied vested interests, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more further about all this and not take any more time here, but I did want to make the introduction on video. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks. I was the planner on that art project. So I'm with you. I remember that.
I'd love to talk
Okay.
more about that.
Sure, no problem. Okie dokie. So a little bit more about what is a transportation plan. And we've been talking a lot about that here today. So thank you all for engaging on that. So it creates a vision for future transportation infrastructure, and it really identifies the existing issues and conditions in the community. So what is happening? What is the pavement like, all the way up to how is the safety on the road, what the crashes look like. We look at traffic data, we look at population trends over time, and then we prioritize projects from a community's perspective. So if a community comes forward and they say, this is really our biggest concern, that's the thing that we talk about, and we say, here is what the community brought forward, and we bring that into this plan, because the plan is really focused on that region and what that region sees as their greatest need and priority. And then it really identifies and prepares for funding sources and opportunities when that funding becomes available. Like we were talking about earlier, we don't want to lose an opportunity for funding for a project. We want to be prepared for that funding when it comes through. So when we're updating a regional plan like the interior plan, the key goals are to really identify and evaluate those existing facilities, those issues and those needs. And that's, you'll probably hear me say that over and over again. And then that next step is to plan for developing, maintaining, and funding roads, trails, non-motorized, motorized facilities, airports, and again, those riverine facilities up to the north. Anything that is touching that DOT infrastructure, what needs to happen in the next 20 years. And then, of course, we can always look at what are those priorities for the communities, and what is it that they are seeing as the biggest priority. So earlier we were talking a little bit about the different transportation modes. With a multimodal plan, we look at in that region what are the big pieces, what are the pieces of transportation that people use every day to live their lives. And in interior Alaska, these are the things that we use getting around, right? And that goes everything from roads. And I think Domo was really excited. We're not just talking about roads, we're talking about roads, aviation, all the way into things like winter access, such as ice roads that we have up in the interior. So what we found so far is we've collected data that is just data that DOT collects or other similar sources. We look at Department of Labor, we look at economic trends, we look at population trends, we look at technical reports, community plans, and other long-range plans and long-range transportation plans, non-motorized plans. We look at statewide plans, and all of these plans have similar stuff in them, right? They've gone out to the public, they've talked about what the priorities are, and they talk about where are they seeing needs and gaps. And so we take all of that and we put it in one spot from the interior's perspective. And so what we really need more of is we really need to know, where are the barge landings? Are there trails and winter trails that we've missed? Are there ice roads that we don't know about? We have some that we know about, but we know that we're probably missing some of these things. So, and then of course, any community concerns or needs, like you all were asking questions, those are pretty fabulous. So, and how you can really help is, so maybe I'm asking, what have we missed? Well, what do we have? So we have a story map, and a story map is this thing, it's kind of a website, and it's got a lot of mapping components on it. And we've put online all of the data that we have. And so you can actually go on there to the map, and Sarah, isn't this right? They can just click on it and add what we're missing, or you can send in a note. And I think that, Jomo, you've got the website up. If you click on the story map button, you should be able to find that.
I'm actually not seeing a story map button, but maybe I'm just not scrolling down enough.
Well, I got you. So here it is. And if you go down here, and I'm making this button
Oh,
bigger
yeah.
because I know
Oh.
it's small. I know it's small. So here's your story map. And if you will just roll down here, go past this one. This has got basically everything that I'm talking to you about today. So here is the infrastructure map, and you can click on anything. And if you click on that, it shows you all my roads. And it's cool. How about ice road?
Wow.
Yeah, isn't this cool? So
Oh, yeah.
I'm a really smart person that does this for me. This was not me. And so you can actually click on it. Here's Minto. Here's the ice road out Minto. You can actually click on it and you see how I've got kind of some unknown information in there. That's fine. But that's where it's located. And you might go over here and say, oh, here's another ice road over in Rampart, you know? So if we're missing anything, you can see what I have, and then you can tell me if I'm missing anything. Trails are another one that are hard to find. Here are the trails that we have in the region. Am I missed something? And then these riverine facilities. So these are all of the barges. I'm sorry, all of the landings that I have, the barge landings. Sarah, anything you want to add about this?
This is a really cool tool. And we would like folks to use it. And we're hoping that people will use it and look and see if they can find the area that they use and then tell us about the area, tell us about the needs and priorities in the area. So we're hoping this map highlights those. And if it doesn't highlight them, we want to know.
you
So
can-
Jessica, do you incorporate accidents in the area
Yeah, we call them crashes.
or crashes? Okay.
Try not to give anybody an accident, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
we look at crash data. Let's see. I don't think that's something that we have. We won't have that on the story map because it's not a physical, I mean, it is a physical thing, but it's not a physical structure that stays all the time. So I look at crashes, and I look at things like, are there any hot spots? I also look at capacity on the road, see if we have any capacity issues. Believe it or not, you don't really have any capacity issues in the interior in the regional section. That doesn't mean that in Fairbanks you don't have capacity issues. That's a different story. But I mean on the big regional connectors, there's not a whole lot of capacity issues in the interior.
So in the crashes, do you analyze the causes? So like
Sure.
permafrost, heaves, ice,
Oh,
or safety would be another one.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you look at crash data, you look at several different things. You look at the types of crash. So is it a rear end? Is it a head-on collision? Is it a side swipe? You look at those different things. If you were talking about, you said something about permafrost. Can you explain to me? You mean like if somebody like hits a bump or something and there's a crash?
No, you go down Richardson Highway, down Delta towards Valdez. I mean, there's always bad heaves or cracks in the highway.
Yeah. Oh, did you say cracks or crashes?
Cracks.
Oh, yeah.
So as you're
Pavement
traveling
condition.
at 55, 60 miles an hour, and you're approaching a permafrost area or a crack area, and it's too late, and you got a load on. I mean,
Yeah.
That's an accident waiting to happen if it doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, so we want you to get in there and take a look at that. That would be fabulous. So the last thing we have here is just some questions for you to think about. You all have asked some great questions. You're pretty plugged into your community and in the interior. So thinking about this long term and thinking big picture, like what are transportation needs in your community today? And then what do you think the transportation system should look like in 20 years? These are just some open-ended questions to get you creative juices flowing, right? And then also there's going to be some opportunities for you to come and chat with the planning team. I'm hoping I have that up here. It took some time to do that. So here is when our upcoming public meetings are. We're going to be up there next week. And there is a Fairbanks meeting on Wednesday, May the 24th at the Fairbanks Pipeline Training Center. Like I said, you won't see Sarah and I, but you will see some of Sarah's colleagues over there, and you'll see some of my colleagues, and they are excited to meet y'all and talk about the project. They'll have maps, they'll have comment sheets, they'll just kind of be folks that know what what's going on with the project, and they would love to chat with you some more. So come by and see us next Wednesday if you get a chance. And Sarah's sending you a flyer if you didn't get that. I know that you all probably got the newsletter, and that's how you asked us to come chat with you. And then the other places, we're going to go out to Minto, we're going to go down to Healy, and then we're also going to Glen Allen, Delta Junction, and Toke. We're just going to do a whole road show, pun intended. So Sarah and I will be there, and we'll also be joined by Joy Huntington from Uqaqti Consulting, and we're just going to go down and have some conversations with folks. All right, that is all that we have. I want to take some time and allow y'all to ask some questions if you have any. This is your project team. If you scan that code, it'll take you right to the story map. We can share this. We've got some links on there, but Sarah will share the fact sheet and the flyer, and that will actually have this code on there too. And you're welcome to distribute that in any way that you would like to. The more folks that get involved, the better. All right, Sarah.
So I have
think
one
that's
more
all I-
question, Jessica.
Oh, sure.
So what about the charging stations along our state routes?
I'm gonna let
Perhaps
Sarah
rather, how
take
does
it.
that kind of thing play in to this long range planning?
I think that's a great question for your DOT&PF planning manager.
So we actually are working with the Alaska Energy Authority, which I'm sure that you all have heard of by now, right? And I think you may have had a presentation with them previously, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken. So they're working on a plan. And so I think we will have pieces of that, or at least have references to that plan in our plan. But I think the regional plan, I don't know that we'll deep dive into electric charging stations, but it's definitely something we need to recognize that it's in our future at some point in some capacity. But we are leaving specifics of that to the Alaska Energy Authority and our NEVI plan.
Okay. So again, it's one of those things it's one of those bits of infrastructure that again will be needed in the future, but it's a little bit out of your wheelhouse.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
But
Everybody wants to work
but
together.
recognized as a need. Oh, okay.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we're recognized as a need. And then I think recognizing that all of our plans are meant to fit together. So the NEVI plan is supposed to help be a part of our regional plans in a way, but we won't tackle the same amount of research and efforts in both plans. We'll do it in the NEVI plan, and the NEVI plan will be referenced in our regional interior plan.
Actually, that brings up something in my mind. And by the way, everybody, again, this is for you all. So you can begin taking yourselves off mute and asking questions if you have any, making comments, put them in the chat box. So ancillary infrastructure. I just had a nice meeting over at the airport, and the airport director let me know that it would be nice. It would be helpful to the airport if they had in-ground refueling infrastructure. Like they have at some of the larger airports. So you're not actually having to drive fuel trucks around. The pump is essentially there where the plane is. Is that level of granularity part of these plans? Because that kind of dovetails with the question of, again, electric charging stations. Or not.
I mean, I don't think so. I think we're more broad-based needs and priorities, and definitely transportation specific. So, if we're talking about gas pipes, water systems, in general, DOT is trying to coordinate project efforts. So if those projects, we're trying to do joint project work as much as we can. But as far as what's in this plan, I'm not sure that we're getting down to that granular level. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, no, that would be something like, so you start from a big picture plan, and then things pop out and you see different issues and needs. And so once you take one of those issues, and that's when it goes over to the engineers. They leave us planners who have our Sharpies and our dots, right, and our public involvement, and they go to the engineers, and the engineers say, oh, okay, here's the problem, and they work on solutions. And those are a little bit more granular, but to your point, what might happen is it comes up, right, in a conversation, and you go, ooh, we need to make a note that this is a concern, or this is a cool idea. And so those things just kind of all not go into the plan as any sort of like, this is what we should be doing, but more of a, hey, this was something that was brought up. So there's nothing too small or too big to talk about in the plan. I just can't do much more than just say, hi, this was something that was brought up. So it's really important though to even get that small.
Okay, but that's fine. Again, it's more of a, there should be a barge dock here, but not necessarily, use this kind of planking, or you need to paint the walls.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
have no idea about planking, but yeah, exactly. You've got it. There should be one in this general area. Okay, we've got some questions in here. How do you work with the FAST committee, with FAST planning? I can't remember if there's a new name. I haven't attended recently. Thanks, Marianne. So FAST planning, they're actually on our working group. They're one of the members of our working group. So FAST planning, of course, they deal with work in their planning area, and DOT works with them. They're on their technical committees. DOT members are on their technical committees. They're on their policy committees. And so there's lots and lots of coordination. What the MPO does, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is called FAST Planning in Fairbanks, what they do is they look specifically at the metro area of Fairbanks, and they look at any federal dollars that are being spent on transportation in that particular area. And what they do is they come up with their own fiscally constrained list of projects through their own planning processes. And so we can't just ignore them because they have a planning process. So what we do is we talk to them and we say, okay, here are the things we're seeing regionally. And they go, okay, this is what we see in our metro area. And we kind of work together to see what we can do to address needs and issues in the larger region, and also consider what's happening there in the Fairbanks metro area. The FAST planning is also in charge of things like transit in the area and transit funding. And they're also, they're working on a plan for a regional planning organization that encompasses more of the kind of greater Fairbanks area. And so all of these are planning efforts that are happening at the same time, and we want to make sure that we coordinate with them. And that goes back to that 3 C's of planning, of statewide planning with DOT, the collaborative, cooperative, coordinated planning. So does that help, Marianne? That's a really good question. Awesome. Can you add sensors to the story map? What kind of sensors, Doug? I can add what do you want to the story map, as long as I have the data.
So speaking with the commissioner and Deputy Commissioner Keith, we were talking about with more automated vessels up the riverine system, as well as GA having sensors along the rivers or along airports, knowing where these sensors currently are so that we can fill in the gaps. Do you have any plans to include any of that?
I love this idea. Is it if it's public information, I can add it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
It deals with transportation and emerging transportation.
Oh, absolutely. I like it.
Thanks.
I like
That's
it.
a really good point, Doug. Again, 20-year planning horizon, we've seen enormously rapid change. I mean, just over the last several years, and it's just picking up steam. How does that inform, or how can it inform what we're up to right now? Things like, if we're going to have self-driving vehicles, there's going to have to be some level of infrastructure that helps allow that to be done safely.
Exactly. No, y'all are all over it. That's exactly the kind of stuff. You
could be in town, Doug.
Next week,
never mind. You're going to talk to him in Minto. Okay.
Next weekend in Minto, right? Well, it's thawing behind me, so yeah.
I'm just making sure I'm getting the questions in the chat. I think they're just a statement. Ramey was just saying better dovetailing, stacking, braiding, blending of program funds, interest stakeholders, and especially right now, given how much is being made available via so many federal agencies and fund. Absolutely. And that, like I said, that's the folks in Sarah's shop. They carry a lot of coordination over in their brains over there. So all of this is continuing to coordinate those funds that are coming through federal and state, and the different programs coming through. And then Sarah also talked a little bit more about that bipartisan infrastructure bill, the IIJA, and how much is going on in that bill. And even though we're only 18 months out, there is so much work being done to coordinate and recognize what programs can be beneficial to Alaskan communities. So that is a pretty cool piece of that. And also just to respond, just kind of to add to, yeah, 20 years is a long planning horizon. That has been the standard for so long. And it's becoming more and more apparent that we have to be quicker. And so these things like these story maps and chatting about what's not on there, like sensors, how do we get that on there and talk about things that help us look at a full picture. Yeah, it's great to look at 20 years down the road, but there's also immediate needs that we want to make sure that we're looking at, and anything that's noticed there. So thanks, Doug. We'll see you next time. So thank you so much all for your time. I know we're about out of time. Are there any other questions for Sarah and I?
We do. We have a question here in the room, please.
Keep
Hi,
going.
I'm Lisa. I'm part of the FEDC team. And my question is in regards to fast planning, with them doing more of their metropolitan-based planning, do they get kind of a higher priority in regards to some of those things that go in your plans, because they do deal with a lot of your DOT roads within the metropolitan?
So the MPO has, so they're a federally mandated organization, and their job is to decide where federal money within that boundary goes. And so they have something called a TIP, a Transportation Improvement Program, and that TIP is incorporated by reference into the State Transportation Improvement Program. That's the DOT's budget. Their four-year budget that they look at. And so even those decisions have been made at a local level, they're incorporated into DOT's statewide budget. And then the other thing is that DOT, to better coordinate and collaborate with that group, they sit on technical and policy advisory boards with fast planning. So that's how they all work together. It's not that they have higher priority, it's that they're mandated to make those decisions. And they do that through their own public involvement process. They have their own planning process for that within those metro boundaries. And they definitely coordinate really, really well with DOT. So folks like Sarah work with Jackson Fox over at fast planning, and they make sure that they're all working together.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Yeah, I think about this stuff all the time. So we can quote some CFRs and some Code of Federal, whatever you want to talk about. You want to talk about some law, it'll be great. No. So this is great questions, and I know that it's not something that y'all think about every day. So I really appreciate you asking some of these clarifying questions. And you know what? I need practice. I need to say this in like normal terms instead of like, engineer speak or whatever it is I've got going on today.
All
Sarah,
right.
did you want to add anything? Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to give Sarah a chance to talk.
Please.
Nope, she nailed it. We love working with FAST. We love Jackson. He represents the MPO very well, and we enjoy working with him, and find that our relationship between FAST and DOT, the local DOT here, couldn't be better. So we're very lucky to have him and that relationship with him. And we think that Fairbanks benefits, and we think the borough benefits, and it's a great working relationship.
Awesome.
Well, I would open up the floor. Again, we are getting near the top of the hour. I would open up the floor for any further comments or questions. As always, again, this is for the gang. While everyone ruminates.
I have
no,
one.
Carl, I'm cutting you off. You've had plenty of time.
Oh, you're done.
No, go ahead, Carl. What do you got? All I was going to say is, in counter to my just moment ago comment, I really wish that this kind of thought process could infect our legislators down in Juneau and in the governor's office. Probably the most important word you used for all of this process was vision, having an image, building an image for what we would like to see in 2040. Because once you have, if you can come together, if the community, if the region, if the state can come together on a vision we can make it real. But in the absence of it, we're just kind of spitballing. We're just brush fire stopping. We're building things that may be good in themselves, but kind of aren't necessarily fully leveraging all the other things that might be around them. So again, I wish that I could get everybody to come together. We were supposed to possibly have a constitutional convention this fall. And in the absence of that, actually come together to kind of create that vision for Alaska 2050. We could all get behind to fully leverage certainly the federal opportunities that are being made available here over the next couple of years. Well, Carl, come on, baby.
One
Last
more,
question.
Carl.
Oh, now he's ticked. All right. Oh, there he
All
is.
right, so here it is. So in reference to FAST, so how much more weight does FAST have than I do, as just presented by Jomo, to come in and say that, Anchorage Airport has vehicle cars, rental cars and private cars covered. But they don't always get the cold temperatures and the snow as we do. So why can't the airport, Fairbanks International Airport, and they should have it, is covered parking for our vehicles? One, it would prevent all the slips and accidents going out to the parking lot because you can't get the parking lot plowed because the vehicles are always there. So I think this is something that should have been done a long time ago. Why it's taken this long, I don't know. But if Anchorage has it, why can't Fairbanks have it?
Well, I'll tell you a secret. Fast planning only deals with surface transportation. So, so first of all, your comment is going to hold a lot more weight than theirs because they don't deal with airports.
Okay.
So yeah. So you're talking to the right folks here, though, because that is so the airports are dealt with through DOT, so and FAA. So that you're in the right place to talk about that. So what I hear from you is that the issue is that it's some sort of it's a mobility issue as you're going back and forth between the Fairbanks parking lot where everything is and the maintenance there and snow removal and making that safe to
Right.
walk around in. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, correct.
Well,
Yeah.
back to the higher point, my understanding is they're actually working on that right now, Carl. And I want to say that might even be programmed in. But again, back
You
to
say
the
the
larger,
parking garage, you're saying?
yes, at the airport. But again,
Ooh.
back to the larger point,
We're getting fancy.
this is the place, this is the kind of forum where those
Exactly.
kinds of needs or opportunities would be presented for consideration and inclusion of the plan.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Jomo, is that for rental cars or is that for all parking at the airport?
Actually, my understanding is it's going to be both.
But it's
Sarah,
not.
maybe we
federal
can
funding.
get some. Maybe we can get some info on that, Sarah, and get that back.
Judy
Let's go
Chapman.
talk-
would know.
Well, again, I assume you're
Yeah, I
going
was
to
gonna
get it.
say,
She works
gonna
for
talk to
Judy.
Yeah, it was
I'm gonna talk to
it was the airport that let me know that was in the offing.
Fabulous. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, everybody, this has been great. Thank you so much. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
again, I guess the final message for the gang is, get your creative juices flowing. Take a look around at our transportation infrastructure of all forms. And again, let your creative juices flow. Let your visioning begin.
Green.
And and as far as here in the community, be ready to come out next Wednesday to the Pipeline Training Center, 5 to 7, to bandy about those ideas.
And Sarah, you said you can email the flyer over for that. I'd like to get it out on the FEDC Facebook and website to help get that shared out further if possible.
We would love that.
Yes,
That would
please.
be
Yeah, I have the
wonderful.
written one, but yeah, if you have a nice graphic of it, we'll smash it or splash that up.
Okay, and we need all of your comments and all of your ideas and all of your priorities. So take a minute to look online at that submit comments button, and we need your feedback. So we appreciate you guys having us today. If you have any follow-up questions, please let us know. Our contact information is on the flyer and in the chat.
Well, thanks a
Awesome.
million. Thank you to our friends from DOWL. Thank you to our friends from DOT. Thank you all for coming. I don't have anything specific lined up for next week, but I'll be working on it. Miss Elena has been official. It is official. It is public that Miss Elena is now our general manager of our interior gas utility. We're about that time, build season to start. So it's a great time. This is normally when we have the IGU in to let us know what their build plans are, but also to remind us to call 411 if we're going to dig where their lines might be. So we'll see if we can get them in the next couple of weeks. In any case, though, just know I'll be contacting you if we have a presentation or not. So beyond that, just have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon for the Energy for All Alaska Task Force.
Thank you, Jomo.